Welcome to TAC Makes, a podcast produced by the Art Center in Corvallis, Oregon. The following episode is one of 6 conversations between artists and collaborators involved with the exhibition Wildfire Water. Wildfire Water was made possible through a partnership with Playa in Summer Lake, Oregon, and is on view in the main gallery May 15th through July 5th, 2025.
My name is Leah Wilson. I am a visual artist, and my work is centered around water for a long time. I'll just say for a long time. It fascinates me, the way that we use water, the way that the water is continuously changing, and the way that we continuously change our landscape because of the water that we use.
Yes. Hello, I'm Marty St. I'm the former manager of Summer Lake Wildlife Area, a position I held with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for 33 years here at Summer Lake. And my background has been pretty much here in the high desert country, working in wetlands where water plays a huge role, as well as fire. We utilize fire as a tool, wildlife management tool, in concert with water management. And that's been my background. I continue to reside here in Summer Lake. This is kind of my home.
Hi, my name is Andy Myers. A visual artist. A lot of my work is more about maybe the creatures that are influenced by water and wildfire. And so meeting with Marty was really a great day for me, going out and seeing the work that he's doing out there and hearing from him. And a lot of that work got it into the piece that I made for Wildfire Water.
Hi, Marty. It's great to see you again.
Good morning, Leah. Great to see you too. Andy, the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good morning, Marty.
Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Leah.
Yes, I became involved with Playa and then the water and wildfire workshop through an invitation. I'd worked with folks there at Playa for several years regarding wildlife management issues. Summer Lake Wildlife Area that I was a manager of at the time is just slightly north of Playa, and it's an integral part of the whole basin, the Summer Lake Basin, and the ecosystem there, where water and fire both have their places, their effects, benefits, sometimes detriments too.
Well, one morning we went out with Marty and we stopped along the side of the road. I think that must have been the west side of the road. And it was against one of the farm fields, and Marty was giving an introduction about just what was happening in the landscape and what we were looking at and how the land was used and how the water was used. And the whole time that Marty was talking, I was looking right across the street because across the street was so different. It was so completely different. It was like a completely different landscape than the side of the road that we were all standing on talking.
Yeah, I think like the trip that we took up to Fremont Point and then looking back down on the wetlands was really an interesting change of perspective where we're on the ground and talking with Marty about what's happening right in front of us, and then go up and kind of see it from almost a aerial perspective was really interesting.
Yeah, I had a very minor role, I think, in the process, and I was and remain in awe with the artists that were out there. I guess my contribution is just limited to the biological resource and then the management of that for these various species to meet their life cycle needs, and then also hand in glove with that is the vegetation that the water allows to take place out there that sustains that wildlife. So, it's kind of a two-part deal, is just to see it expressed differently. I see it in the wildlife resource or the reaction.
Marty, I don't see your role as being minor at all because going out with you put things into perspective. And what you were showing us and what you were telling us let me see the landscape and the water in a completely different perspective.
I'm glad that I was able to play some sort of a role there. It's a difficult situation because of the complexity of the whole system out there. We've got regional and international ties, and there's also some local connections that repeat yearly. But then to see them through the seasons of the year, it would be really interesting. It's so hard to explain, is to see the changes as the seasons progress, both with the water, the vegetation response, and the wildlife utilization out there. And then to paint the picture of some of these long distance travelers that are coming to us from the Arctic or coming from Russia and headed to California and coming back and doing that. So it's a big complex picture, and I'm glad you were able to capture some of that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking about the time that we were allowed to spend out there was, I mean, it seemed like a lot, but it was just tiny, like a tiny fraction of time. Um, and but getting to come out of a few different times of the year was really interesting. And so we kind of got a little tiny snapshot of maybe what you're talking about, like that change.
Very dynamic through the seasons out here, and the changes are just so impressive, and they're really hard to explain. From the scientific standpoint, just the connections, what's driving the systems, and the birds that are there, why they're there, and other things. So it's a very dynamic and complex system, and kind of the theme of it was, all influenced by the the ability of management of water, not only what is there naturally, but how we utilize that precious resource that in recent times it seems to be diminishing, but the importance of it is just incredible.
Marty, how would you how do you see all of that management working with the complexities of the system? Is it working well? Are things in balance, or is there something in the system that seems to be particularly struggling because of the water management or thriving?
Boy, that's a great question, and very difficult to answer, because of the effects of these migratory birds, and in some cases we are just supplying a small part of their life cycle needs, and other things are happening, whether it's their breeding areas in the Arctic or their wintering areas, down in California, or even as far away as Central America. And so, we just try and set the table. We build it and we cross our fingers that they will come. But they have got their own intuition and their instincts. They know where to go, when to go. Like this year, radically different than a few years ago when it was so dry and we were coming out of the drought. Now we have a lot of water, a lot more water than we've had before. And so some of these seasonally flooded areas now have water where they were dry for 4 or 5 years. And then the birds are able to take advantage of that. So they may not be here, at the same magnitude that they were earlier. And, so it changes. So I think, well, like I say, it's, we've built it and we just hope they will come.
Yeah, I feel like we need to come every year.
Yeah, between years, it's amazing, and even within years. Yeah, it's a good suggestion, Andy, to be here, at multiple years and multiple times of the year to see all that in action.
Do you ever get like a year where there's one species of bird that shows up that you've never seen before?
There's getting to be, and I guess in the field we call them vagrants,
Mm.
ones that are kind of wandering around. And, I used to ask my professor in college, hey doc, I saw this bird out here, what's it doing here? This isn't where it normally lives. And he shrugged his shoulders and say, well, birds have wings, and so they figure it out, and there must be some sort of communication that, some of these can wander and look. And then there's other things that take place. I don't know if you recall, there was one species that comes to mind, a white-faced ibis. In the early years when I was here, there were very few, but there was a major event in the Great Basin region, lots of water, excess water, where these birds, these ibis, had a pretty good stronghold in the Great Salt Lake area. Well, a lot of their habitat got flooded out, and some of those birds went to other places, and they came to Summer Lake, and now they've kind of discovered it. So we've got a burgeoning population of them. So they're pretty resilient, and they're able to take advantage of that. And probably this is the way it functioned naturally over time. The Great Basin was very dynamic, long periods of drought, other long periods of flooding and things that way. And so these birds having wings were able to go to these areas and adapt.
I love that perspective because we could observe as many patterns as we care to, and then the wildlife, just nature, will completely break that pattern that we think we know. Yeah, that was one of the things that I was fascinated when we were showing our work at Playa last April, and you came when you were looking at my paintings. You started telling these stories. I mean, I was it was just so amazing to listen to you look at my work, my painting, and talk about the stories of the vegetation and the birds, and how these specific you were able to identify specific areas, so specific places within the place, and told stories about the vegetation changes, and so the birds and how the birds used it differently.
Yeah, it's kind of what we call, the art and science of wildlife management. A lot of it's adaptive. You take an action out there with a preconceived idea, and then you evaluate the outcome. And then, this is great. Now, how do I replicate that? And who do I replicate it for? Which species? I'm looking at the avocets that were there. Okay, those are a breeding species that are with us, from about April until October. But then you have to fast forward and future it out. Okay, we also have to think, what's the Arctic migrant, like the tundra swans or the trumpeter swans that come to spend the winter down there? What do they want? What do they need? And the value is of just being in place for a long period of time to see that, to see those different changes, and kind of an action reaction type deal.
Yeah, it's so essential that you've been there for so long. So, I mean, you just have so much experience and so much knowledge in that particular place and the rhythms of it. Versus somebody coming in. I think it happens so often. Some people will just come and they've never been there before, and they start making these management decisions, but they don't have that experiential knowledge that you have. I so respect what you've been doing, and it's so valuable. I wish we valued it more as a society. It's essential.
Thank you. Well, I think, kind of it helps when, folks like you through art and artistic means can expose people to that and stuff. And so they can get a little bit of an idea of what's taking place out there. This isn't just one fixed snapshot in time. It's something that's, very dynamic. I've said that before, and hopefully it inspires people to come back at different times and to look at it through different lenses and such.
Yeah, and the people that we talked with too. So there's like, human elements in the drawing that kind of represent the different people that are working out there and doing conservation work and different jobs that they have out there and living in that place.
Yeah, I feel like your work really, really synthesizes all of that because it does. It weaves it together or stitches it together in a way that's more holistic than maybe the parts that the rest of us were looking at.
Yeah, that's a dynamic of the landscape, what we've inherited or created, we're trying to incorporate that, these various aspects, and like the cows and the the culture of the community and stuff. That's what was settled for. So yeah, that's great to be able to express that and to show it to others and stuff, to get a bigger picture of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was interesting when the kids came through and were looking at the work, and I was asking them if it felt like where they live, and they all agreed. They said, "Oh yeah, definitely. This feels like home. This feels like where that kind of represents my day-to-day experience." So that was rewarding. That was a good critique.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It was also important to me to be able to include some of that aspect of I mean because it's such a huge part of how that land is used, and so how we're shaping that land, and so when they came and they really responded to the farm fields, so the concentric circles of the farm fields from the pivots, and and I got a very similar response from them, because it reflected where they live back to them, so well that they were able to tell me very specific stories about when they were in that specific field. They could identify, many of them could identify the exact location that I had painted, where I didn't even really know where that exact location was, but they were able to figure that out and tell me stories about time that they spent there, which was really rewarding.
And like you say, yeah, it's very amazing to watch the change take place. I know a few times I've made presentations to some of the school groups down there in Paisley, and from being here for a while, I had, and this was really a while ago and reflective of my capabilities with technology, but it was slides,
Oh yeah.
35 millimeter slides that I'd taken early on, and I was making a presentation and showed it to this school group, and one of the students raised their hand and they said, "Hey, in this picture, you must have taken that before the Winter Rim burned in 2000." And I thought, wow, that is pretty amazing that student could see that change in the landscape up there from his position in the valley floor. He was a rancher's son, and could see that and see the changes and the difference. So
Right. It's interesting to see it through a different lens. Somebody else's. You're seeing it through some different eyes. Where we're coming in and visiting the place and kind of reflecting what we see back to the people that live there.
Thanks for listening to TAC Makes a Podcast. You can find more episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and at theartscenter.net. That's arts with an S. Be sure to follow us on all platforms so you never miss an episode. Keep creating, keep connecting, and we'll see you next time.